entitled this message, Smooth Stones. But a lot of what we're going to be talking about, too, is those spiritual giants that rise up in us. Now, a lot of this came out of a conversation I was having with my wife, and believe it or not, we were talking about frustration. It's hard to believe that a husband and a wife would be talking about frustration. So as we're having this talk, I was actually feeling pretty good. I was kind of on a spiritual high. God had been dealing with me about, He'd given me a great insight about ants. And He had dealt with me about opening the church for prayer, so I was feeling pretty good about the things I was doing. And we've been talking about how we get frustrated with God's timing. And He's not exactly lining up with what we want to do. So, as I started talking about this, I felt like I had some good wisdom coming out. So that's when God kind of stepped in. And He said, boy, you're doing good. Look at you. You're all suited up. You got your armor on. You're feeling good. Look at you. You know, so I'm standing there. I'm looking at my spiritual mirror. I'm all puffed up, shining it up. Hey, come on now. My spiritual mirror, I've got a full head of hair. Now, come on. So, as I'm doing this, I'm feeling real good. You know, because I've been dealing with things. God's really been talking. I feel like I've been growing. And then I hear this. Isn't it funny? Well, when God says that to you, the chances are it's only going to be funny for one of you. And He says, it's amazing. You're doing all this growing and you're listening and you're learning. He says, but even with all that armor on, that little 5-year-old boy can still find a hole in it.
Amen.
Boy, I just went to staring at my shoes. Well, I look like Tyler after I've told him no. So God's dealing with me about this. And He says, that boy is a smooth stone. He's a smooth stone that I put in your path to slay that spiritual giant. That giant that you have of a lack of compassion, a lack of understanding. I want him to do what I want him to do. I'm a big, strong guy, go do it. Well, he's got a will of his own. He's slowly breaking that down in me, that God's saying the way you're dealing with him isn't working. You're going to have to accept the place that I've put him in. You're going to have to accept what I've got him doing in your life. You're not just there to support him. You're not there just to lead him down the path and show him what he needs to do to be a godly man. He's teaching you.
Amen.
He's teaching you the way that you've always dealt with things. It's not the right way.
Amen.
You've got to let go of those spiritual giants.
Yep.
Now, I'm just going to kind of reference this in Numbers here in chapter 13, 32, and 33. I looked up a few places in the Bible where we deal with giants, where we hear stories about it. Well, this deals with the 12 spies that were sent into the Promised Land. As we've got these 12 spies that go into the Promised Land, they start seeking out. They're looking for what God's promised them. God's given them a promise of what this land holds for them. When they come back, they say, well, surely it does. It flows with milk and honey. This place can sustain us. It's got everything that we need. But there's great walls there. There's great cities. They're mighty cities. And the men there, they're giants. We're like grasshoppers in their sight. We can't do this. We can't possess this land. Now, Caleb, he steps up and says, no. He says, it does. It flows with milk and honey. It's got everything we need to sustain us. It's everything that God promised that it was. Let's get our stuff. Let's go get it. It doesn't. Caleb didn't see the giants. He didn't see the armor. All he saw was God's promise. Now here you've got a group of people. Now I believe Scott preached on this a while back where it was 11 days. They were on the borders of the Promised Land. So less than 2 weeks earlier, they saw everything that God did. They saw, protected them through all these plagues that He inflicted on the Egyptians. Constantly, each one, breaking Pharaoh down. Till Pharaoh finally said, you know what, get out. I've had enough. Take your people, take your stuff, and go. So here's Israel. They're coming out of bondage. They're feeling great. God set us free. So they're moving along, headed to the promised land. They're ready to grasp and get a hold of it. Boy, then they come up to the Red Sea. And I don't know how many of you have ever been there, standing there on the shores, looking out over a sea of trouble. You're looking around, looking behind you, you look up, really, God, you brought me all the way out here just to die? This is where it's at, like I needed to walk before I got here. So, these people, they're standing there just like we do. We stand there and we look at it, we don't see what. God just brought us through all this. He just blessed us and brought us through, kept us safe.
Yes, amen.
He brought us out of bondage. And we still find ourselves standing there looking at this going, I don't see, I know what God did back there, but that was back there. How's he gonna accomplish this? And then all of a sudden you just feel this breath of God come up behind you. Seas part, and all of a sudden there's a way. It's dry ground, you walk across. You're doing great. Man, you're on the other side, you're singing, you're happy again. God's good. God keeps showing you over and over again what he can do. And here's the thing. Once we get to the other side, we have a tendency to turn around and look. And here's the thing. Once you get to the other side of that, after God's parted the seas, you want to go back to Egypt, you either need to learn how to swim or build a boat. Because God's not going to help you get back there.
Amen.
It's a one-way trip.
Yes.
You want to go back, you're going to do it on your own. So, as the Israelites, they're crossing over here. They get to the other side and they're happy. And here comes this army coming through here. And they see what God can do. God closes it behind them. And all of a sudden, those spiritual giants that are inside them of fear and doubt are crushed right before them. They've seen God just take his hand and wipe them. They're gone. They don't have to deal with it. Here we go just a few days later. Walking into the promised land. They've already seen what God can do.
Yeah.
God just brought them through blood and death back in Egypt.
Yeah.
Saved them from all of that. Made a way for them to get across the Red Sea. And then crushed the enemy behind them. And here they are. They're standing there. And they're going, how can we possibly possess this land? It's got giants in it. They didn't have the faith that God would deliver this to them. So because of that, they chose to spend 40 years in the wilderness because they let that spirit rise up in them of fear and doubt. So I'm gonna move ahead here to dealing with David. When David was facing Goliath, he come into this camp, just a small boy, compared to these other warriors that are out there. All these other warriors are battle tested. But David approaches him. He's got no fear, he's got no doubt. But he walks into this camp and here's this Philistine. He's standing there. And boy, he's just really talking down God. He's mocking God, he's blaspheming him. He's just telling him, hey, you know what? Just send one of your guys out. Just one. If you could find one person out of all these battle-tested men who God has delivered through all these enemies time and time again, just send one of them out to face me. That's all I need. Just send one. You've got this whole army that's sitting there just shaking. They've got no idea. Man, I can't go out there. This guy will kill me. Look how big and ferocious he is. David walks into this camp and he's going, what are they waiting for? How come they're not headed out there? Somebody needs to get out there and take care of this guy. He says, you know what? He's tired of doing it. I get a feeling that at this point he's kind of offended by the army of Israel and their actions to just stand back waiting. He says, I'll do it. I'm not going to wait for anybody else. I'll do it. If there's nobody in God's army that's going to stand up and do it, I'll do it. He goes to Saul. Now Saul was a king that was chosen by the people. He was chosen because he's big, he's strong, he's a warrior himself. And the best that he wouldn't even go out there and fight David or fight Goliath. The best that he would do in the whole situation is, here, David, use my armor. Go ahead and take that out. The armor's been tested, so you should